I first realized something was wrong when my mother called me at 3 in the morning, crying so hard I could barely understand her. She said she had finally developed the wedding photos. The ones we had been waiting for since the ceremony. The ones my wife, Lena, insisted on picking up herself. "I don't think those are your pictures," my mother whispered. I think. I think they're someone else's." I drove to my parents' house without even putting on proper shoes. I kept telling myself there was a simple explanation. Maybe the lab mixed up the files. Maybe Mom was just tired and emotional. But when she spread the prints across the kitchen table, my chest tightened. They were clearly from our wedding. Same venue. Same arch of white roses. Same string lights hanging from the oak trees. Even the same handmade sign that said, "Forever begins today," in Lena's handwriting. But the bride was not Lena. She wore a dress identical to my wife's. Her hair was styled the same way. Her veil was pinned at the same angle. But her face was different. Older, sharper. And beside her, standing where I should have been, was a man who looked disturbingly like me. Same build, same dark hair, even the same crooked smile. At first, my brain refused to process it. I kept flipping the photos over, expecting to see someone else's name written on the back. There was nothing. Just glossy paper and proof that my wedding had somehow happened without me. When I confronted Lena that morning, she didn't deny it. She just sat at the edge of our bed, staring at the floor, twisting her ring around her finger. "They're from my first wedding," she said quietly. "First." The word echoed in my head. "You told me you were never married," I said. "I told you I was divorced," she corrected. I didn't say when. She explained that she had married when she was 22. A rushed ceremony, a man she barely knew. It ended badly, and she erased it from her life. Burned documents. Deleted photos. Changed her name back. When we met, she didn't want that version of herself to exist anymore. "So why do the photos look exactly like ours?" I asked. She hesitated, then said, "Because I wanted to do it right this time." The same dress. The same decorations. The same vows. She had recreated her old wedding with me, down to the smallest detail. I felt like I had stepped into a rehearsal for a life she already lived. "That man in the pictures," I said. "He looks like me." She nodded slowly. "I think I have a type." It should have been a joke. It wasn't. I asked why my mother had never seen these photos before. Lena admitted she had gone to the lab early and asked them to remove the older set from their system. They promised her they would. Somehow they hadn't. "What else did you remove?" I asked. She looked up at me then, eyes wet. "I removed the parts of my life that didn't fit us." For the next week, I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing the stranger's face next to hers. I started imagining him standing where I stood, hearing the same vows, holding her the same way. I wondered if she had compared us. If she had chosen me because I felt safer, or because I looked familiar. Then I did something I'm not proud of. I searched her old email account. She never changed the password. I found a folder labeled Archive. Inside were scans of court papers and a single message thread. The last email from her ex-husband was dated 6 months before our wedding. It said, "I saw the pictures online. You didn't even change the song." I checked our wedding video. The song Lena walked down the aisle to was her idea. I thought it was just her favorite. I confronted her again. This time, she didn't sit. She paced the living room, arms crossed like she was cold. "He found our wedding page," she said. "I didn't think he would." "Did you invite him?" I asked. "No." "Did you want him to see it?" She didn't answer. That silence felt heavier than any confession. It meant she had staged our wedding not just for me, but for the ghost of a marriage she never buried. I started noticing other things. The way she arranged our house to match the layout in one of the old photos. The way she corrected me when I said "our song," telling me it was just a good song. The way she avoided talking about the future as if she already knew how it would end. One night, I asked her if she loved me or if she loved the chance to redo her past. She cried, but she didn't say I was wrong. That's when I understood the title of our album. Lena had named it True Beginning, but the wedding photos had lied. They showed a beginning that was actually a repetition, and I was standing inside a story that wasn't originally written for me. I didn't leave right away. I told myself that discovering the truth didn't automatically erase what we had. We still shared a bed, a mortgage, and a calendar full of plans we had made together. But every time I looked at Lena, I saw two brides layered on top of each other. The woman I married, and the woman who had already stood under those same lights with someone else. I asked her to show me everything. All of it. No more archives. No more edited versions. She brought out a small box from the back of the closet. Inside were documents she hadn't destroyed, a marriage certificate with another man's name, a divorce decree, and a thin photo album. Not the glossy prints my mother had seen, but faded copies. The bride in them was thinner, nervous-looking. The groom's face was blurred by time, but the resemblance to me was still unsettling. He left, she said, 3 months after the wedding. He said he felt like a stand-in, like I was marrying an idea instead of a person. The words hit me harder than I expected. Did he know about the first wedding you recreated? I asked. She shook her head. There was no first. That was the first. I thought if I made the second one perfect, it would erase the failure. But you didn't make it different, I said. You copied it. I corrected it, she whispered. That night, I slept on the couch. Not because I was angry, but because I felt displaced, like I was borrowing space in someone else's memory. The next day, my mother came over. She wanted answers too. Lena tried to explain, but my mother kept staring at the photos as if they were evidence in a trial. You built your new marriage on the bones of the old one, my mother said. That's not starting over. That's pretending. After she left, Lena accused me of letting my family judge her. I accused her of letting her past design our future. The argument circled the same point, whether intention mattered more than effect. She insisted she never meant to deceive me. I told her that repeating something without telling me was still a lie. A week later, the ex-husband showed up. I didn't recognize him at first. He stood at the door holding a paper bag with a bottle inside. He said he just wanted to talk. Lena went pale when she saw him. I told you not to come, she said. You told me you were happy, he replied. I wanted to see what that looked like. We sat at the kitchen table like actors forced into an awkward reunion scene. He looked around the room and smiled sadly. You kept the same floor plan, he said. Lena snapped that it was just a coincidence. He laughed softly. You always liked symmetry, he said. 2 weddings. Same shape. Different man. I asked him why he had emailed her. Because I recognized myself in you, he said. I saw the pictures and thought, that's the guy who thinks he's starting something new. The room went quiet. He told me how she had obsessed over the ceremony back then, how she treated it like a ritual that could fix her. When it failed, she blamed the man instead of the pattern. She doesn't marry people, he said. She marries the moment. Lena shouted at him to leave. He did, but not before looking at me with something close to pity. That night, I asked Lena if she had married me because she loved me, or because I fit the shape of the husband she had already designed in her head. She said both. I didn't know how to live with that answer. I started going through our wedding photos again, looking for myself. I was there in every frame, smiling, holding her hand. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was replacing someone in a costume already worn. The lies weren't in the images. They were in the story they told. A story about a fresh start that was actually a loop. And loops, I realized, don't move forward. They just circle the same mistake. After he left, the house felt contaminated by memory. Every object seemed borrowed from another version of her life. I began to notice how often Lena said the last time when she meant before you. The last time she wore that necklace. The last time she used that recipe. The last time she believed in weddings. I asked her if she had ever thought about what I wanted. Not the ceremony. Not the symmetry. The marriage. She said she had. Then she added, I just thought you'd want the same things. That sentence followed me to work, to the grocery store, into the shower. I realized how little of our life together had been built from shared decisions instead of inherited ones. We lived in a house she chose because it resembled an apartment she once loved. We spent holidays the way she used to spend them with him. Even the dog's name had been on a list she'd written years earlier. I tried to remember the first time we met, searching for something untouched by the past. We had met at a charity event. She spilled wine on my shirt and laughed too hard. I thought it was fate. Now it felt like casting. 2 weeks later, Lena asked if we could renew our vows. Not with people, she said quickly. Just us. Something small. Something real. I wanted to believe her. I wanted a version of our story that wasn't a remake. So I said yes. We drove to a lake outside the city, the one place she had never shown me photos of. It was quiet, gray with winter. She brought a blanket and a notebook. No dress. No arch. No song. She started to read something she had written. It was different from our wedding vows. No promises about forever. Just sentences about trying again, about learning to love without rehearsing it first. I listened, waiting for relief. It didn't come. When it was my turn, I couldn't read what I had prepared. I told her the truth instead, that I felt like I was living in a museum of her regrets, that I didn't know which parts of her belonged to me and which belonged to a man I had never met until he stood in my kitchen. She said she was sorry. She said she would change. She said she didn't realize how deep the habit went. But habits that shape a life aren't undone with apologies. We went home quieter than we had arrived. That night, she slept with her back to me, as if protecting something invisible between us. A month passed. We tried therapy. She talked about control, about how designing the wedding twice made her feel safe. I talked about being replaceable. The therapist asked if I felt chosen. I said I felt selected. The breaking point came from something small. We were sorting through mail when an envelope fell out of a magazine. Inside was an old seating chart from her first wedding. Names crossed out, rearranged. At the bottom, in different ink, was my name, written years before she knew me. I stared at it until the room blurred. She said it was just a coincidence, that she reused notebooks, that she liked lists. But my name had been written under the heading groom. I asked her when she wrote it. She said she didn't remember. That was the moment I understood that the photos hadn't lied alone. The lie had been practiced long before I arrived. I packed a bag that night. She stood in the doorway and asked where I was going. Somewhere unscripted, I said. She didn't follow me. She just sat on the bed and held the notebook like it was evidence she couldn't destroy anymore. As I drove away, I thought about how many people confuse repetition with repair. How easy it is to rebuild the shape of something without changing its meaning. I had married a woman who wanted a perfect beginning. I left because I wanted a real one. I moved into a short-term rental across town. It smelled like fresh paint and nothing else, which felt appropriate. I told myself the space was temporary, but I arranged it carefully, as if trying to prove I could still build a life without borrowing one. Lena texted every day at first. Apologies, explanations, memories. She sent me a photo of us from the wedding, cropped tightly so that only our faces were visible. No arch, no lights, no symmetry, just two people. I chose you, she wrote. I stared at the message for a long time. I wanted to believe that choice could be separated from pattern, but I kept hearing her ex-husband's voice in my head. She doesn't marry people. She marries the moment. 2 weeks after I left, she asked to meet in public. A cafe near the river. Neutral ground. She looked different. Tired. Less arranged. No jewelry except her ring. I've been thinking about what you said, she told me. About wanting something unscripted. I asked what that meant to her. She said she had thrown away the old photos. All of them. The duplicates from both weddings. She said she had deleted the wedding page and blocked her ex-husband. She said she wanted to start again, for real this time. With me? I asked. Yes. I asked her a question I had been avoiding. If I didn't look like him, would you have noticed me? She hesitated. Just long enough. I don't know, she said. But I know I noticed you. That answer didn't comfort me. It felt like standing on a bridge that might hold or might already be cracked. We tried dating our own marriage. Coffee instead of dinners at home. Walks instead of routines. She stopped saying we always and started saying, what do you want? It was effort, and it was real. But the past has a way of leaking through even when you repaint the walls. One afternoon, I went back to the house to pick up more of my things. Lena wasn't there. I opened a drawer in her desk and found a USB drive labeled backup. I didn't plug it in right away. I knew I shouldn't. But I also knew that trust without truth was just another performance. The drive contained one folder. Inside were photos I had never seen. Not of the weddings, but of her alone. Fitting the dress. Practicing the walk. Repeating the vows in front of a mirror. The timestamps showed years apart. In one video, she stood in the dress and said, "This time, I won't choose wrong." She didn't say a name. I felt something in me close. Not in anger, but in recognition. She hadn't been rehearsing love. She had been rehearsing escape. From failure. From herself. From the idea that a different man could change the same story. When I confronted her with the drive, she cried harder than I had ever seen. She said she kept it to remind herself what not to do again. "But you did it again," I said. She said she didn't know how to build a future without copying one. That she was afraid if she improvised, it would collapse. I told her that repeating something perfectly doesn't make it new. It just makes it quieter. She asked if I was leaving for good. I said I didn't know yet. That I needed to live somewhere my name wasn't written in advance. We sat in silence until the sun went down. For the first time since I met her, She didn't try to fill it. I left with the drive in my pocket. Not to keep it, but to understand it. That night, alone in the rental, I watched the videos again. Not to judge her, but to see what she saw when she looked at herself. She looked like someone trying to convince the future to behave. And I realized something I hadn't admitted before. I wasn't just hurt. I was scared that if I stayed, I would become another version of the same man, framed differently, living in the same pose. I returned the drive the next morning without watching the rest. Some truths don't need full evidence. They just need recognition. Lena met me at the door with red eyes and a mug of coffee she had forgotten to drink. I placed the drive on the table between us like a verdict. "I'm not angry," I said. "I'm exhausted." She nodded as if that made sense. She told me she had booked an appointment with a different therapist. Not for us. For herself. She said she wanted to understand why she kept rebuilding the same day instead of moving past it. I believed her. That was the problem. I still believed her. We tried a separation that looked like patience. No lawyers. No dramatic exits. Just distance with rules. No dating. No rehearsing futures. Just time. The first week felt like relief. I slept without dreaming about white dresses. I cooked meals that didn't belong to any memory. I chose music that wasn't tied to an aisle. Then the questions arrived. Friends asked what happened. I said it was complicated. My mother asked if I was coming home. I said I didn't know. Lena sent me short messages. Not apologies anymore. Observations. She said she had thrown away the notebook with the seating chart. She said she rearranged the house so it didn't match any old photos. She said she was learning to let things be uneven. One evening, she called and asked if I would come with her to the lake again. Not for vows, she said. Just to sit. I went because I wanted to see if the place still felt unscripted. It did. Winter had stripped it down to water and trees and wind. No symmetry. No witnesses. We sat on the same blanket. She didn't bring a notebook this time. She didn't bring anything. "I think I treated marriage like a spell," she said. "Like if I said the right words in the right order, I could rewrite what happened before." I asked her what she thought love was now. She said, "Something that changes when you stop forcing it to look the same." It sounded right. It also sounded late. A few days after that, I got an email from the photography lab. They apologized for the mix-up with the archived files. They said they had finally purged the old images from their system and resent our correct album. I opened it alone. The photos were beautiful. That was the cruel part. There we were, laughing, kissing, holding hands. No ghost groom visible. No older bride. Just us. For a moment, I wanted to pretend those were the only images that existed. That nothing else had ever been printed. Then I saw one frame I had never noticed before. A candid shot taken when she thought no one was watching. Lena was standing under the lights, staring at the empty aisle. Not at me. Not at the guests. At the space where someone should have been walking toward her. The look on her face wasn't fear. It wasn't joy. It was calculation. I understood then that the lie wasn't in the photos. It was in what they didn't show. They showed a moment that looked like love. They hid the reason it was built. I met her that night and told her what I saw. She said she didn't remember that shot. She said she probably hadn't been thinking anything. But I had lived long enough inside her patterns to recognize the pause. I told her I didn't want to be the man she used to correct her past. I wanted to be the man she discovered by accident. She asked if that meant divorce. I said it meant I couldn't keep acting like the first wedding never happened because it was still happening. Just quieter. She cried. Not loudly. Not dramatically. The way people cry when they realize effort doesn't guarantee forgiveness. We agreed to wait before making it legal. To sit with the truth instead of redesigning it. As I walked back to the rental, I thought about how many people believe they can outrun their history by recreating it perfectly. How repetition feels like control when it's really just fear with better lighting. I still loved her. That was the most confusing part. But love built on rehearsal starts to feel like a role. And I didn't know how much longer I could perform. The waiting became heavier than leaving. Every day felt like a pause between breaths. We were married on paper and separated in practice, orbiting each other through messages about practical things. Bills, mail, the dog. Nothing about what we were becoming. One afternoon, I went back to the house to collect the last of my books. Lena wasn't home. The rooms looked different. Furniture shifted. Photos removed. Walls bare where frames had been. It was her attempt at erasing symmetry. In the bedroom closet, I found something she must have missed. A garment bag pushed behind winter coats. Inside was the wedding dress. not hanging like before, but folded, as if she had meant to put it away and couldn't finish. I touched the fabric and felt ridiculous for expecting it to feel like anything other than cloth. In the pocket sewn into the lining, I found a folded piece of paper. It was a list, not a seating chart, not vows, a checklist, flowers, lights, music, man. Underneath, in smaller writing, "Don't fail again." I sat on the floor and read it until the words blurred. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't even personal. It was survival disguised as celebration. That night, I asked her to come over to the rental. I showed her the paper. She didn't try to explain it away. "I wrote that after the divorce," she said. "I thought if I controlled everything, I wouldn't lose it." "You didn't lose it," I said. "You replaced it." She looked at me the way people look when they realize they've been protecting the wrong thing. "I didn't know how to choose a person," she said. "So I chose a structure." The honesty landed differently than her apologies had. It wasn't softer. It was sharper. I asked her something I hadn't dared to before. "If you could do it again, without the dress, without the script, would you still marry me?" She opened her mouth, closed it, then said, "I don't know who I'd be without the script." That answer finally felt complete. A week later, she told me she was moving out of the house. Not because I asked, because she said she couldn't learn to build something new in a place designed for repetition. She rented a small apartment with uneven floors and bad light. She said it felt honest. We met once more at the lake, not to fix anything, to decide what we were stopping. She said she loved me. I said I believed her. That wasn't the problem. "I don't want to be your correction," I told her. "I want to be your first draft." She nodded slowly. We signed the papers the following month. Quietly. No ceremony. No witnesses except a clerk who didn't know our names until she printed them. When it was over, Lena held the pen too long, like she expected something else to happen. Nothing did. We walked out separately. I didn't feel free. I felt accurate. Later, I deleted the wedding album from my phone. Not because it was painful, but because it was misleading. It showed a story that looked like a beginning. It wasn't. It was a copy of an ending that hadn't been finished yet. Sometimes I still think about the man in the first photos. The one who looked like me. I wonder if he felt the same unease before he left. If he also sensed he was being placed into a shape already carved. I don't blame Lena anymore. I see how fear can teach someone to rehearse instead of risk. But love, I learned, doesn't survive as a reenactment. It needs surprise. It needs mistakes that belong to only two people. And I needed a life where my name wasn't written in someone else's past. A year passed before I could look at wedding photos without feeling like I was trespassing. Time did what arguments couldn't. It made the details less sharp and the lesson more solid. I moved again, this time into a place I chose without checking how it looked in any picture. I bought mismatched chairs. I learned to cook dishes I'd never seen on Lena's table. When people asked about my marriage, I said it ended because we were both trying to fix something different with the same tools. One afternoon, while clearing old files from my laptop, I found a folder I had forgotten. Inside were the photos my mother had first spread across her kitchen table. The wrong wedding. The wrong bride. The man who looked like me. I didn't feel anger anymore. I felt distance. Like looking at a city you once lived in and realizing you no longer know the streets. There was one image I hadn't studied before. A wide shot of the venue after the ceremony. Chairs slightly out of line. A napkin on the ground. The bride and groom walking away, backs to the camera. They looked small. I realized something then. Those photos had never been about deception. They were about fear. Fear of choosing wrong. Fear of starting from nothing. Fear that if you didn't copy happiness, you'd never recognize it. A few months later, I ran into Lena by accident at a bookstore. She was thinner, quieter, no ring. She told me she had stopped trying to make sense of the past and started asking herself what she actually liked, not what she was supposed to want. "I bought a couch just because it was ugly," she said, almost smiling. We talked for 20 minutes. About books. About weather. About how strange it was to see each other as ordinary people again. When we said goodbye, she hugged me without ceremony. No script. No pause. Just a brief, human moment. I didn't feel like her correction anymore. I felt like a chapter that had been necessary. That night, I finally understood why the photos had unsettled me so deeply. They showed a wedding that looked real but belonged to no present moment. They captured a promise that was already looking backward. Love isn't proven by repetition. It's proven by risk, by standing in something new without knowing how it will end. I deleted the last copy of the album. Not in anger, in acknowledgement. The wedding photos had lied. Not about what happened that day, but about what it meant. They claimed a beginning where there was only a pattern. They showed a union where there was a rehearsal. Now, when I think about marriage, I don't imagine arches or songs or vows. I imagine two people building something with no template. Something that can't be recreated because it never existed before. And I know this. If I ever stand under lights again, it won't be to repeat a moment. It will be to discover one.